what we're going to be going over the rest of this video is ways to do quick mental percents without necessarily having to do cross multiplication. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about here is what I like to call our magic percents. Our magic percents. Okay. Now, what I mean by this, okay, is that basically there are certain percents that are very easy to find, okay, that will allow us to find other more difficult percents by breaking those percents down, okay? Now, the first magic percent, okay, is going to be 50%. 50%. We've already talked about this some, so we're just going to review it here. Okay, 50% is the same as just finding half of a number, half of the whole. Okay. Okay, an example of this, okay, would be, okay, an example would be 50% of 40, okay, and so half of 40 equals 20. So that means 50% of 40 is 20. All right. Our next magic percent is 10%. 10%. Okay. So 10%, you just move the decimal place. Okay, move decimal place once. Okay, 1 to the left. Okay, move decimal 1 to the left. All right, so a quick example of this would be, what is 10% of, let's see, 10% of 340. Okay, so you take 340, move your decimal 1 to the left, okay, and so that's going to equal 34.0, which is simply 34. Okay, so you just move it 1 to the left. Our third magic percent is going to be 5%, okay? And it's sort of interrelated to what we just did, because you take 10% of a number, okay, and then cut it in half. 10% in half, okay? So if we build on the example we just did, we can quickly find what 5% of 340 is, okay? Because we already know that 10%, okay, is equal to 34. So then you just find half of 34, okay, which is going to be 17. Okay, so that means 5% of 340 is 17. We just move it once to the left to get 10%, and then we cut that in half, which is 17. All right, and then we'll be doing a lot of practice with this. I know this is kind of fast, but if you're not getting it now, we'll do lots more practice. So now we have our last magic percent, which is 1%. 1%. Okay. This one is similar to 10%, except we move the decimal. Twice to the left. Twice to the left. Okay. So if we want to do a quick example here, and we want to find out what 1% of, let's see, 1% of 276, right? We just take 276, put our decimal place twice to the left, okay? So our answer is going to be 2.76. So So 1% of 276 is just 2.76. Okay, so using these four rules, okay, 50%, 10%, 5%, 1%, we can solve really any percent problem that we want mentally, just by hand, right, rather than using a calculator. All right, so let's try some examples. Okay, so first example we're going to do is 30% of 22. Okay, so what is 30% of 22? All right, so the way we're going to do this is we are going to break this down into parts, okay? So the first part we have is 10% of 22, okay? Now, we said we just move the decimal place once to the left, okay? So we take our decimal, 22, move it once to the left, and so 10% is just going to be 2.2. All right, and then we want to say, okay, 30% is just equal to 10% plus 10% plus 10%, or 10% times 3. It's just 3 10%, and so that's also going to be equal to 2.2, okay, because that's 10%, plus 2.2 plus 2.2. Okay, 2.2 plus 2.2 plus 2.2 is just 6.6. Okay, so all we needed was 10%. Okay, and then we found out what 30%. There's 30% of 22 is 6.6. All right, now let's do another example here. So let's do 15%. 15% of 50. Okay. All right. Again, let's break this down. So we have, okay, 10% again of 50. Now we just move it once to the left. Okay. So 50, move it once to the left. So that's just equal to 5. We just take off a 0 because it's 5.0, but then we don't need to worry about the 0.0. Okay. So 10% of 50 is 5. Now we also do 5% of 50. Okay. Now again, we know that 10% of 50 is 5. So we do half of 5 is equal to 2.5. All right. And then we have, okay, we have 10% plus 5% is equal to 15%. So that means we can say 5 plus 2.5 is equal to 7.5. Okay, so 15% of 50 is 7.5. All right, so we just did 10% and 5%, and we are good. All right, moving right along. So now let's do 16% of 50. All right. Now the reason we're using 50 is because I basically want to build off what we just did, right? So we knew that if we just want to kind of redo what we did real quick, right? We knew that 15% was what, 7.5, right? Now we did that by finding 10%, which was 5, okay? And then we did 5%, which was 2.5. So that was 7.5, okay? So that's how we got 15%. And then we can say 1%, okay, of 7.5. Now remember, we just take, 1% of 50, okay? 1% of 50. And now we just take 50 and move our decimal place 2 to the left. So it's equal to 0.5. Okay. So then we take 15% plus 1%, which is just 7.5 plus 0.5. So that's going to give us 8 as our answer. Okay, so 16% of 50 is 8. So we just we do what we did before, which was 10%, okay, plus 5%, which gave us 15%, and then we did plus 1 more percent to give us 16, okay, 15, that equals 16%, okay, so that gives us 8, right? Okay, one more example here. We've got 55%. 55% of 24. Okay, so if you want to try this one on your own, go for it. So 55% of 24. Let's break it down. First things first is we can use our magic 50%, okay, of 24. Now that's half of 24, which is equal to 12. And then we can say 5% of 24, okay? Now remember to do this, we get 10%, so that's gonna be 24, move 1 to the left, so that's gonna be 2.4, okay? And then we find half of that, which is 1.2, all right? And then we say, okay, 50% plus 5% is equal to 55%. And then, so that's going to be 50% we know is 12 plus 5%, which we know is 1.2. Okay. And 12 plus 1.2 is 13.2. So 55% of 24 is 13.2. 13.2. Okay. Moving right along. All right. So let's try a few on your own. So let's do 32% of 150. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so hopefully you tried to solve it on your own. Now let's break it down. Okay, so first things first is we say, okay, 10% of 150. Okay, so we take 150, move our decimal place once to the left, so it's 15. So it's 15. Okay, now if we have 30%, okay, so that means 30%. It's just going to be this times 3, right? So 30% of 150 is equal to 15 times 3, okay, which is just 45. Okay, so we know that 30% is 45. All right, now we need to find 1% of 150. Okay, now we know that 150, move it twice to the left, so that is 1.5. Okay, and then 2% of 150 is going to be 1.5 times 2, right? So just take 2 of them, that's 3, okay? So now we know that 30% plus 2% is to equal 32%, okay? Now we said 30% was 45, plus 2% is 3, so that means our answer is 48. 48. So 32% of 150 is 48. All right, great work. Okay, another one to try on your own. 26% of 330. So try that one on your own. 26% of 330. Okay, so now let's work through this. 10% of 330. okay, is equal to 330 with your decimal place moved once. All right, so that gives us 33. All right, so that means 20% of 330 is equal to 33 times 2, which is just 66. Okay. Now we want to find 5% of 330. Okay. Which we already found out what 10% is, right? Which was 33. So we just take half of 33. Okay. And then half of 33 is going to be so if we take half of 30, that's going to be 15. And then we take half of 3, it's going to be 1.5. So half of 33 is going to be 16.5. Okay. So 5% of 330 is 16.5. And then finally we need to do 1% of 330. Okay. So 1% of 330, we just take 330, move our decimal place twice to the left. Okay. So that's going to be 3.3. All right. Now it's getting a little complicated, I know, but let's put this back together. All right. So we have 20% plus 5% plus 1% is equal to 26%. So now that means we know that 20% is 66 plus 5%, right, is 16.5 plus 1% is 3.3. Okay, so if we put all of that together, we get 85.8. 85.8. All right, so 26% of 330 is 85.8. Okay. One last example here. And with this last example, I'm going to show you a little trick that you can do with your calculator, solve percents if you're able to use your calculator. But we'll get to that at the end. So 72% of 180. Okay, so 72% of 180. Now take a second and try to do this on your own and try to work it out. Okay, so hopefully you gave that a try. Now let's break it down. Okay, so we want to start with our biggest percent, biggest special percent, right? So first things first is we're going to find out what 50% of 180 is. Okay, so that would just be half of 180, which is just 90. All right, and then we need to find out what 10% of 180 is. Now we're going to take 180, move our decimal place once to the left. So that's going to be 18. So that means 20% of 180 is going to be 18 times 2. Okay, 18 times 2, which is just 36. Okay. So we know what 20% is. We know what 50% is. That leaves what? We need 1% of 180. Okay, so that means we take 180 and move it twice to the left. So that's going to be 1.8. Okay, so that means 2% of 180 is 1.8 times 2. Okay, so that's 3.6. You can kind of see the connection there, right? So again, bringing it all together, we know that 50% plus 20% plus 2% is equal to 72%. So that means we can simply say that 50%, which we know is 90, plus, okay, 90, plus 20%, which we said was 36, plus 2%, which we said was 3.6, So that gives us a final answer of 129.6. 129.6. Okay, so that's our answer. 72% of 180 is 129.6. Right? So we found 50%, we found 20%, we found 2%. Okay? Using our magic percents, right? We only have to know 50, 10, and 1. Really, you can do all of it with 10 and 1, but it's easier to know 50 because it kind of speeds things up a little bit. All right, so last thing is we're going to kind of go back and look at some of these that we just did, right? And I'm going to show you a quick trick that if you are allowed to use your calculator, okay? So this is what we would think of as the percent calculator trick. Okay, so the trick that we can use with our calculator, okay, is you can just multiply by the decimal form of a percent, okay? So if we look back at the problem that we did a few minutes ago, all right, we can say 32% of 150, okay? All right, now what we need to do here is we need to convert to a decimal, okay? Convert to a decimal, all right? So when we convert to a decimal, all we do is we take 32%, okay? And we move it twice to the left, okay? Twice to the left. That's the way we convert to a decimal. So 32% in decimal form is going to be 0.32, okay? So first thing is we convert it to a decimal, okay? And our second step is we just take that decimal, 0.32, and we multiply it by our whole number, okay? So 0.32 times 150, okay? If you just type that into your calculator, I mean, you could work it out, but it depends on how comfortable you are multiplying decimals. But if we just multiply it on our calculator, we're gonna get 48 as our answer. And that is our answer, okay? So we can do this with all of the problems we just did, okay? Now this is of course only if you're allowed to use your calculator, but if you are, this is a very helpful trick to have. So if we find 26% of 330, okay? So I know you already know the answer to this from the last section, but I want you to solve this out. 26% of 330. So take a second and try to solve this out using your calculator. Okay, so what you should have done is first step was convert to a decimal. So we have 26%. Okay, move it twice to the left. So that's going to equal 0.26. And then our second step was to multiply that, 0.26 times 330, okay? And that gives us 85.8, 85.8, okay? And then finally, let's do the the last problem you did on your end. So 72% of 180. Okay. So I want you to try to work that out using your calculator. All right, so hopefully you worked it out. And so we're going to say, okay, 72%. First thing is we need to convert to a decimal. So we have 72%. We move it twice to the left. Okay, so that equals 0.72. And then our second step is to multiply that by 180, which is our whole. Okay. So 0.72 times 180 should give you, on your calculator, 129.6. And that's your answer.